When the lie began. No one warned Nora that the most dangerous love of her life would begin on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. She arrived at the office at exactly 8:47 a.m., coffee cooling in her hand, mind already heavy with a marriage that had grown quiet in all the wrong ways. 7 years married, 10 years together, and lately, strangers sharing the same bed. Her husband, Caleb, had kissed her goodbye that morning out of habit, not desire. The kind of kiss that said, "I care about you," but not, "I want you." Nora told herself that was enough. It had to be. The new creative director. The office shifted the moment Julian arrived. People noticed. People whispered. Late 30s, calm confidence, sharp eyes that missed nothing, a voice that didn't need to be loud to command attention. When he was introduced as the new creative director, Nora felt it before she understood it, that subtle tightening in her chest, that instinctive awareness of someone who would matter. He shook her hand. "Julian Hayes," he said. His grip was firm but brief, professional. "Nora Williams," she replied. Their eyes lingered a second too long, just long enough to be dangerous. The first crack. They worked late that night. Everyone else left. Deadlines didn't care about personal lives. At 9:30 p.m., the office lights dimmed automatically, leaving only the glow from their screens and the city beyond the windows. "You don't miss details," Julian said, studying her design mock-ups. "I don't like letting people down," Nora replied. Something in her voice caught his attention. "People," he repeated, "or yourself." She didn't answer. At home. Caleb was already asleep when she got in. She watched him for a moment, the familiar shape of his body, the man she had chosen, the life they had built. And still, she thought of Julian's eyes, the way he listened, the way he saw her. She hated herself for it. The unspoken truth. Over the next weeks, something grew quietly between them. Not touches, not confessions, just glances held too long, conversations that lingered, silence that felt charged instead of empty. They never crossed a line, but they stood close enough to feel the heat. And, deep down, Nora knew. Some lines are crossed long before skin ever touches skin. That night, lying beside her husband, Nora stared at the ceiling and realized something that terrified her more than betrayal ever could. She wasn't falling in love. She was waking up. And once you wake up, you can never pretend you were asleep. The space between them. By the third week, Nora could feel it before she saw him. Julian's presence had a weight to it, not heavy, intentional, like he stepped into rooms already knowing where he belonged. She hated how her body noticed, hated how her mind followed. The meeting. They were alone in the glass-walled conference room, city sunlight spilling across the table. Julian stood behind her chair, leaning in just enough to point at her screen. "You're holding back here," he said quietly. She swallowed. "I didn't think it needed more." "It does. You do." She turned to face him too quickly. "What does that mean?" For a moment, he looked like he might say something reckless. Instead, he stepped back. "It means you're capable of more than you allow yourself." The air between them tightened. The almost. Later that afternoon, the elevator stalled, just for a minute, long enough for silence to grow uncomfortable, then intimate. Julian exhaled slowly. "I'm going to say something, and I need you to stop me if I cross a line." Her heart pounded. "Okay? I don't think this is professional anymore." The doors remained closed. She should have said, "Stop." She didn't. When the elevator jolted back to life, they stepped out like nothing had happened. But everything had. At home, again. Caleb tried that night. He reached for her in bed, fingers familiar, touch practiced. She let it happen out of obligation, not desire. And afterward, staring into the dark, guilt washed over her. Not because of what she'd done, but because of who she'd thought about while doing it. The lie she told herself. She told herself it was harmless, that attraction wasn't action, that longing wasn't betrayal, that she could control this. But every time Julian looked at her like she mattered, not as a wife, not as a role, but as herself, something inside her leaned forward instead of pulling back. The text message. At 11:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. Julian. I shouldn't be thinking about today the way I am. She stared at the screen. Didn't reply. Then another message came. You don't have to answer. I just needed to be honest. Her thumb hovered. She typed, deleted, typed again. Nora. You're not alone. The moment she sent it, her chest filled with both relief and fear. Because honesty, once spoken, demands consequences. Some love stories begin with a kiss. This one began with a confession neither of them could take back. And the most dangerous part? They still hadn't touched. When want becomes dangerous. Nora started noticing the moments she had once ignored. The way Julian's voice softened when he said her name. The way his eyes searched her face before speaking. The way silence between them felt full instead of awkward. It scared her, because fear meant she understood what was at stake. The late night. The office was empty again. Too often lately. Rain streaked down the windows, the city glowing beneath the clouds. Nora saved her work and leaned back, exhausted. Julian stood near the window, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. You should go home, he said. So should you. He smiled faintly. I don't know if home feels like home anymore. The words hung between them, uninvited but true. The line they named. I need to say this, and then I'll stop. Her breath caught. I'm attracted to you, he said calmly. Not in a passing way. In a way that changes how I move through my day. She closed her eyes for a second. That's not fair, she whispered. I know, he replied. That's why I'm telling you. I don't want to lie. She looked at him then, really looked. You're my boss, she said. I'm married. I know, he said again. That's why I haven't touched you. The honesty shattered her defenses more than seduction ever could. The step forward. She didn't know who moved first, only that the space between them disappeared. Not a kiss, not an embrace, just closeness. Close enough to feel his breath. Close enough to know that stepping back would hurt. This ends if you say stop, Julian said quietly. She didn't say it. She stepped back herself. Not because she didn't want him, because she wanted him too much. The aftermath. She drove home in silence, hands shaking on the wheel. At a red light, she whispered, What are you doing? No answer came, only the echo of a truth she could no longer deny. She was no longer protecting her marriage. She was protecting a lie. Caleb's question. That night, Caleb studied her over dinner. You seem distant, he said. I'm tired, I replied too quickly. He nodded, but his eyes didn't leave her face. Are you happy, Nora? The question felt like a blade. She opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know, she said, and for the first time in years, she meant it. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing one simple fact. Love doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly. And by the time you hear it, it's already inside you. The weight of pretending. Nora became an expert at looking normal. She laughed when she was supposed to. She showed up on time. She answered emails with steady hands, while her thoughts were anything but steady. The lie didn't shout. It whispered. The change everyone noticed. Julian kept his distance. Too much distance. He no longer lingered at her desk. Meetings stayed professional. Conversations stayed safe. And somehow, that hurt more than closeness, because restraint felt like rejection. "You're different," she finally said one evening as they packed up in silence. "So are you," he replied gently. Their eyes met. Neither smiled. The guilt. Guilt didn't arrive as shame. It arrived as grief. Grief for the woman she had been when loving Caleb had felt easy. Grief for the certainty she no longer owned. At home, Caleb tried again. He cooked dinner. He asked about her day. He reached for her hand across the table. She let him, and hated herself for how empty it felt. The almost confession. One night, she stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. "I need to tell you something," she practiced. Her reflection didn't answer. She imagined Caleb's face, confusion first, then pain. She turned away. Some truths feel too cruel to speak. The office rumor. By Friday, whispers started. Nothing specific, just enough. Julian closed his office door that afternoon. "We need to be careful," he said. "We haven't done anything," she replied. "Exactly," he said, "and people still feel it." The word feel echoed between them. The invitation. That night, an email arrived. Company offsite, weekend retreat. One hotel, one agenda, no escape. Her chest tightened. Julian caught her gaze across the office the next morning. Neither of them smiled. Desire had become a burden, and the scariest part, she no longer knew whether she wanted relief or surrender. The weekend away. The hotel sat on the edge of the city, all glass and quiet luxury. Too beautiful for the kind of tension Nora carried inside her. She checked in with a polite smile, badge clipped to her blazer, wedding ring heavy on her finger. Around her, colleagues laughed, relaxed, loosened by the promise of a weekend away from routine. She felt none of that ease. She felt watched by her own thoughts. The first night. The welcome dinner was elegant and loud. Wine flowed, conversations blurred. Nora felt Julian before she saw him. He stood across the room, speaking to someone else, posture calm, composed, like this weekend meant nothing more than work. Their eyes met briefly. Just a second, but it landed like a hand on her spine. The walk. Later, she stepped outside for air. The night was warm, quiet. A pool of light spilled across the courtyard. "You shouldn't be alone," Julian said behind her. She didn't turn. "I could say the same to you." He joined her at the railing, careful to leave space. "I almost didn't come," he admitted. "So did I." Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. "This is a bad idea," she said. "Yes," he agreed. Neither moved. The truth, spoken softly. "I think about you more than I should," Nora said finally. Julian exhaled slowly. "I think about you when I wake up and when I try not to." She closed her eyes. For the first time, she didn't know how to answer honestly. Some weekends changed nothing. This one changed how she understood herself. And once you see the truth clearly, you can't unsee it. The things you can't hide. The office felt smaller when they returned. Walls closer, voices louder, glances sharper. Whatever restraint Nora and Julian had practiced over the weekend hadn't erased what people sensed. If anything, it sharpened it. Desire, when suppressed, hums. The distance. Julian became formal. Emails only, group meetings, no lingering looks. It was the right thing to do, and it hurt more than closeness ever had. Nora caught herself watching him from across the room, missing the quiet understanding they'd shared, missing the man who had seen her without asking for anything in return. Caleb notices. That evening, Caleb stood in the doorway as she set down her bag. "You're somewhere else lately," he said. She stiffened. "Work's been busy." "It's more than that." She didn't respond. He stepped closer, voice softer. "Are you still in this with me?" The question felt heavier than accusation. She looked at him, the man who knew her history, her habits, her fears. "I don't know how to answer that," she said honestly. His face tightened. "That's not an answer," he said. "It's the only one I have." Later that night, she sat on the couch, phone in her hand. Julian's name hovered in her contacts. She didn't call. Some conversations, once started, cannot be stopped. The warning. At work, her manager pulled her aside. "People talk," she said carefully. "I don't care about rumors, but perception matters." Nora nodded, heart pounding. "Be careful," the woman added. "Careful with him." The warning wasn't cruel, it was kind. The breaking point. That evening, Julian stopped her in the hallway. "You need to talk," he said. They stood near the stairwell, voices low. "It's not sustainable," he said. "You're hurting, and I'm not helping." Her chest tightened. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I'll step away, completely, if that's what it takes for you to find clarity." She stared at him. "And if clarity leads me back to you?" she asked. He didn't hesitate. "Then it has to be a choice, not an escape." That night, Nora lay awake between two lives, one built on history, one built on possibility, and for the first time she understood. Doing nothing was no longer neutral, it was a decision. The truth spoken out loud. Nora didn't plan the conversation. It arrived the way all inevitable things do, uninvited and overdue. Caleb was in the kitchen when she came home, sleeves rolled up, the smell of dinner filling the room. Ordinary, familiar, painfully safe. "We need to talk," she said. He turned slowly, already sensing the weight in her voice. The confession. "I'm not having an affair," she began. His jaw tightened. "That's not comforting." "I know," she whispered, "but I need to be precise." She told him everything except names. The distance, the emotional closeness, the way she had begun to feel awake around someone else. She didn't cry. She spoke carefully, like someone handling glass. Caleb listened in silence, hands gripping the counter. "So you love him," he said finally. "I don't know if it's love, but it's something I can't ignore." The question that cut. "Have you stopped loving me?" Caleb asked. She swallowed hard. "I love you," she said, "but I don't know if I'm still in love." The words landed like a door closing. He nodded once. "Then we're already broken," he said quietly. The space between. That night, Caleb slept on the couch. Not out of anger, out of self-respect. Nora lay alone, staring at the ceiling, the truth heavier than the lie had ever been. Julian's silence. Days passed. Julian kept his promise. No texts, no looks, no moments. The absence hurt worse than longing, because now she had chosen honesty, and it was lonely. The decision. On Friday, Caleb stood in front of her with calm eyes. I don't want to be the man you stay with out of guilt, or the man you leave because you're afraid. Her chest ached. What do you want? She asked. I want you to choose, even if it's not me. That night, Nora stood alone on the balcony, city lights below her, wind brushing her face. She realized something painful and freeing. Love isn't proven by how much you feel. It's proven by what you're brave enough to face. And tomorrow, she would have to face everything. The space after goodbye. Nora packed a bag at dawn. Not everything, just enough. Caleb watched from the doorway, hands in his pockets, face composed in a way that hurt more than anger ever could. I'm not leaving forever, she said. I know, he replied. You're leaving to think. She nodded. They didn't hug. Some goodbyes are too honest for comfort. The separation. The apartment she rented was small and quiet, temporary. The silence inside it was not. Without Caleb's presence, Nora couldn't pretend anymore. There was no routine to hide in, no shared history to soften the truth. Only questions. The message she didn't send. She typed Julian's name more than once, deleted it every time. If this was a choice, it had to be clean. Work without pretense. At the office, Julian avoided her eyes. Professional. Distant. She respected him for it, and resented him too. During a team meeting, she caught his gaze for half a second. It held concern. Nothing more, nothing less. Caleb's grace. A week later, Caleb texted, I started therapy. Her throat tightened. I needed to understand where I'd disappeared inside us, he added. She stared at the screen for a long time before replying, I'm proud of you. It was true, and it hurt. The realization. One night, alone on her apartment floor, Nora finally cried. Not for Julian, not for Caleb, for herself. For the years she had gone numb, for the woman she had buried to keep the peace, and for the cost of waking up too late. Some people think leaving is the hardest part. It isn't. The hardest part is sitting still enough to hear who you really are. And Nora was finally listening. What remains? 3 weeks passed, not quietly, not peacefully, but honestly. Nora learned the sound of her own thoughts in the morning, the way silence could be kind instead of cruel, the way loneliness sometimes meant space to breathe. And then the call came, from Julian. The meeting. Can we talk? He asked. No emotion, just clarity. They met at a quiet cafe near the river, neutral ground, daylight honesty. Julian looked tired, but grounded. I'm leaving the company, he said after they sat. Her heart skipped. Because of me? No, he replied. Because I don't want power or proximity to confuse what's real. She studied him. I needed to know, he continued, whether you were choosing yourself or choosing me. She swallowed. I chose myself. A slow, genuine smile touched his lips. Then we can talk, he said. No rescue, no escape. I won't be your reason for leaving your marriage, Julian said calmly. And I won't be the reward for your bravery. She nodded. Tears blurred her vision. I don't want a secret. I don't want intensity without stability. Neither do I, he replied. They sat in that truth, quiet, unromantic, deeply intimate. The other goodbye. That night, Nora met Caleb. They walked through the park where they used to run together years ago. I don't hate you, he said. I hated losing you while you were still standing beside me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, and I forgive you. Forgiveness, she learned, doesn't mean staying. It means releasing. The choice made real. I want us both to have the chance to be fully chosen, even if that's not with each other. They hugged then. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like holding on. It felt like letting go. Later that night, Nora stood alone again, but not uncertain. She realized something quietly profound. Love that asks you to abandon yourself is not love, and love that waits for you to arrive honestly just might be. Tomorrow would not be dramatic, but it would be real. The life she chose. A year later, Nora barely recognized the woman she used to be. Not because she had changed everything, but because she had finally stopped pretending. Where everyone landed. Caleb moved to a new city. He wrote occasionally, short, thoughtful messages. No bitterness, just mutual respect and the quiet understanding that love doesn't always mean forever. He had started dating again. That knowledge stung for a moment, then softened into relief. Julian kept his distance for months, not out of fear, out of integrity. The choice revisited. They didn't rush into anything. When Julian and Nora finally met again, it was as equals, no power imbalance, no secrecy, no unfinished business pulling at them. They walked along the river, hands brushing but not touching. This feels different, Nora said. It should. It's not borrowed time anymore. Not a rescue. They didn't fall into each other. They stepped. Slowly, deliberately. Love didn't arrive as fire this time. It arrived as clarity. And clarity, she learned, was quieter, but stronger. The life she built. Nora changed jobs, moved apartments, rediscovered parts of herself she had silenced for years. She learned that passion without truth is chaos, and truth without kindness is cruelty. The balance mattered. Final scene. One evening, as the city lights flickered on, Julian looked at her and asked, "Do you regret it?" She thought of the pain, the honesty, the cost. "No," she said, "but I respect it." He smiled. "That's the kind of love I want." She reached for his hand. This time, there was no guilt. Some love stories don't end with fireworks. They end with alignment, with people choosing themselves first and each other second. And sometimes, that's the bravest romance of all. She didn't get the life she planned. She got the life she finally told the truth for.